Welcome to the Safe Village, a community for everyone who cares about student safety and well-being. My name is Sydney. I'm the CEO of Sassian, and my guest today is Manuel, the founder of Growing with Gratitude. Ash works with thousands of kids around the world around the topics of gratitude and kindness. I'll let him explain what all of this is. Ash, welcome to the Safe Village.
Thanks, Sydney. Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. There's a lot going on in the world right now, Ash. So I have to ask you, Ash, what's top of mind?
Well, for me, Sydney, what's top of mind is I think, particularly young people, because that's what I focus on, but particularly teaching young people skills to adapt in an ever-changing world. Because even before COVID, when we're talking about resilience and grit and thriving, it was top of mind then. But even since COVID, it's been even more top of mind. So teaching young people skills, how they can handle situations and adapt to ever-changing world, as I said, that's top of mind for me for sure. And the great news about it is that we can actually practice it, and we can actually teach young people how to practice it. So when those challenging times do come up, they've got the skills to call on to put things in a more positive point of view, or particularly use their reframing skills.
Wow. Well, what a time to be talking about teaching kids and humans, in fact, doesn't matter what age, we're talking about kids, but adults need it, given what we've just gone through and are still going through from a perspective around wellness and mental and emotional wellness. Tell me more about what you mean by these skills and being able to reframe. You've got a whole method around this. Can you share more with us on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess as an adult, I learned some skills about reframing and using your self-talk to see things from a more positive point of view. And what I realized and discovered as an adult, and I wish I learned it when I was younger, is that just like learning a skill in a sport, you can learn to be more resilient and happy through practice. And what I discovered, what leads to resilience, is things like practicing to be grateful, kind, empathetic, reflecting on the good things that happen, and serving others. And just not knowing what it is, but actually doing it. And it's okay to know what it is, but the real power is actually doing it. So for me, what I've found is that when I practice gratitude, if I'm having a bit of a bad day or things aren't going too well, it's easy for me to see things from a more positive point of view. And I use my self-talk to reframe, coming from a place of being grateful. So just a basic example, like if I'm having a bad day, I might say to myself at the end of the day, look, hasn't been the best day, but you know what? Maybe it's not so bad after all. I've still got food to eat. I've got home to go home to. I've got family who loves me. Yeah, it hasn't been great, but maybe it's not that bad. Now, that might seem pretty basic to tell yourself that, but if you are going through a bit of a bad time, and it's particularly when it's a really bad time, it's really hard to think like that. But through practice over time, it does become easier. And as we know, the more we practice something, the better we get. So if we can teach young people those skills from a young age, when their brains are more, I guess, open to habits and building those habits from a young age, we can impact them and help them learn the skills to be able to see things from a more positive point of view and move forward from challenging situations when they come up, particularly from that place of being grateful, but also reflecting on the good things that happen. So I don't know about you, Sydney, but there's been times when you might have 5 or 6 great things happen during a day and one not so good. And what do we tend to focus on?
Of course, the one thing that's not good, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as humans, we're wired that way. And that's why the 6 o'clock news is 95% negative, because it rates. But there is research out there to suggest we can train our brains to focus on the good things, but it takes practice. So just a little tip that I've learned, and it's been really powerful, is just keeping a notepad next to your bed and spending a minute writing about the best part about your day.
Mm-hmm.
And also another one is 3 ways that you help someone. So what did you do for someone else today? Or three things you did for someone else. And what did you do to help yourself? So 3 ways that I help myself. So for an example, I could have helped myself by exercising, ate a healthy meal, and perhaps read 10 pages of a book I learned something from. And I could have helped somebody else by bought a friend a coffee, or at the supermarket, somebody couldn't reach something on the shelf, so I got it for them. Just simple things like that. When you first start out, though, sometimes if you have a bit of a bad day, it is hard to think of those things, but over time, it does become a lot easier. And same with, what do I do to help someone? Sometimes it's actually hard to think, did I do anything? But what I found when I first started, it was a bit tricky. But as you go on, because I know I'm going to reflect on it every day, you start to become actually conscious and actually know or actually literally do things for people because you know you're going to reflect on it. So there's just a couple things I think that really help, particularly practicing to be grateful. And there's so many ways you can practice it. We can go through some of them, but also having that little positive reflection practice where we are focusing on the good things as well, and just keeping a notepad next to your bed is a really powerful way to do that.
And with that notepad, is it a morning thing or an evening thing?
Evening. So right when I before I go to sleep, and just have it there, write it down. And there's also research around when you have that positive thought, the last positive thought before you go to sleep, you tend to wake up in a more positive frame of mind, and there's research behind that as well. So it's a really good way to do it, but you got to be consistent with it. It's like anything. Like we could do it once and then don't do it again for another month, but it really needs to be a consistent daily practice to really build that habit.
Fantastic. So I think have a natural tendency towards being positive and seeking things that, fulfill me. And I guess that's been the journey of an entrepreneur and then to a leader and things like that. And I remember at quite an early age, 16, 17, coming across books by Tony Robbins and things like that. And that really spoke to me. And I know for some people it's like too much or rah-rah, but for others it works. But the point is, at 16 or 17, was that the right time? Because, and then, maybe I had a natural tendency towards positivity, but you're working with kids way earlier, way younger. And I wish that happened or existed when I was a kid, in my primary school or earlier days of high school. What are you finding from your perspective, the adoption rate and the interest at that level? What's the impact like as well?
I think particularly schools, having background as a teacher myself, there's big. When I first started growing with gratitude back in 2014, there was actually a bit of a push then. So even back then, there was a big push for positive education in schools. I'll go between wellbeing and positive education, but I mean the same thing. So
yes,
big push for wellbeing in schools, and it was sort of a take up, but the schools weren't really sure how to do it. But so there was a lot of interest around, but okay, there's research around it, there's benefit for it, but the issue was that how do we do it? So that's what I think where I felt I could really help, because as I said, I learned some skills that I learned as an adult, or I learned as a child, or as a young person, I should say. And I just combined what I knew as a teacher with what I learned myself, and really been, I don't know if it's a bit over the top of the word, but really obsessed with helping schools implement their positive education programs over the last 7 years and working out the best ways to do it. So I think that schools are really understanding, even before COVID, really understanding the benefit of it. And they're starting to be open to putting a whole school approach together. And it does take a lot of commitment. It takes commitment from the leaders, the teachers. They've got to allocate the time to do it, and they've got to be consistent with it. And then they've got to know how to execute it. So they're four steps that I've sort of learned and really, I guess, been aware of how important they are. And that's like a 4-step formula that I teach people. And now the most important one is the execution of actually how to do it. So once the school does it, there has been noticeable, I guess, benefits of it from students. And just a quick example from a few years ago, I did a university standard evaluation, or a little test of the program Growing with Gratitude in a school. So, and it was quite interesting because one of the year 5 class, just a year 5 level, or was the whole school, but this year 5, 2 classrooms were doing it. One did it and one didn't do it. And it's quite, I guess, anecdotal, but it was really obvious in the interview processes and the surveys that came back that the students had been involved, were able to articulate a lot better than the other ones. So I remember a young boy in one of the classes who were involved consistently in practicing gratitude on a regular basis. And he was able to articulate quite well that what he's learned is that, I clearly remember this, it was a couple of years ago. He just said, look, I actually realised how lucky I am to be able to have a chance to go to school. So I found I'm able to more focused in class now because I understand that I'm lucky to be able to go to school. And that was quite a profounding moment just through the actual practice of it, where the other class, there was no one really speaking at that level.
Yeah.
So I think that was just something that stood out for me through practice that can really help. And there was other in that process as well. There was a few parents who said, to the classroom teacher, what have you done to my kids? My child, they're actually starting to do things around the house. They're starting to help out. They're starting to appreciate it more. So that it does happen through, you can see a lot of benefits from it, but it's got to be consistent. That's the key.
Yeah. So, so I've got 3 kids, and I've done youth leadership programs before, as in I was leading groups and so on. So I absolutely know and have bought into the power of positive language. So all of that. But again, we have to differentiate between the rah-rah versus what you're talking about, which is that consistent behavior that we're setting into almost the daily routine, right? And what's also observable from what you're describing, and your reference to the 6 o'clock news, or the example or the question you asked me, 4 good things, 1 bad thing, what do you focus on? It seems as humans, we get more reaction from others when we complain about things, and so that sort of that stimulus of, if I talk about this, I get a bigger reaction. So that's what sort of reminds us or seeps in, versus what you're getting them to do is on a daily basis, think about all the things that they're grateful for, how they've helped others, how they've helped themselves. That sort of forcing mechanism, there's nothing else that forces us to do that. It's only if we want a reaction, we complain about something, we get someone's reaction, right? So yeah. Really interesting. So tell me more about, you're being very casual about it, but you work with thousands of kids throughout the year. Tell me more about how the program works and how it scales, because, I've seen photos and videos of kids all over the world that are using your programs.
Yeah, so I guess how it scales is, I guess technology is a wonderful thing. So last year, actually, during the first COVID, I guess, when outbreak and we had lockdown across Australia, and I'm in Adelaide, so we're pretty lucky. We were a little bit impacted, but compared to Melbourne and New South Wales at the moment, it wasn't that bad at all. But we were impacted. So one thing I wanted to do to grow that global scale is that hold an event where we bring young people together from around the world to practice gratitude. So I had this idea of doing a half-an-hour lesson where we get on a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams or something like that, record it, and have a live lesson together, and call it the world's biggest gratitude lesson. So that's the idea what came up. And then I used to actually teach the head of IT at the education department in South Australia, and I reached out to him, and he said, yeah, come in and use the media room, and I had support from the education department, and they were really helpful on the day and leading up. And it was a perfect room, great cameras, great lighting, great sound. And we were able to get about 50,000 young people register from about 38 or 37 countries that first year to practice gratitude at the same time, or not quite at the same time because of the time difference. And when we actually did it, it was a bit of I didn't realise, but some of the schools were already on holiday at their middle year break. But we still got 50,000 young people register. And it was an amazing event to bring young people together from around the world. Now, because it was such a big event, we couldn't have our cameras on at the same time. So it was a bit of a one-way stream. But what we did do, we get them to send photos through of them doing the activities in action, whether they're at home or in the classroom. And we put together a nice 3-minute video of the participation in different parts of the world. And that was a really cool activity to do. And I was able to, I guess, reach schools from around the world, because I used to teach at an international baccalaureate school, where if you're teaching in the international baccalaureate system in Adelaide, for example, you could be teaching the same thing in Singapore. So it's the same curriculum. And I was able to reach out to a lot of those schools, and not just international baccalaureate schools, but a lot of other schools as well. But that was the main way to bring those young people together from the IB schools. But yeah, I think it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter your background, your gender. Gratitude is for everyone, and it doesn't discriminate. We can all benefit from it. It's one of the few things that is a global thing that we can all have. So, and the great thing about it, we can practice it. And also we can practice in different ways, because what I found is that, and again, in a research project, similar to what I was talking about before, is we did a little research project with only 10 kids, and they had to do 5 or 6 things at home with their families for about 5 weeks. And one of them was write something they were grateful for every day, and for that 5 weeks. And it was just in a journal. And every one of those students, even though it was only 10, said that activity was boring. and I understand it, because after a while, yes, it can be to get repetitive. It wasn't really specific about, okay, what are you grateful for about your family or anything like that. It was just, what are you grateful for? So over time, they found it hard to think of things, and also became a bit of a chore and a bit boring. So that was really good feedback, because then I thought, okay, well, it's still a good activity, but maybe just not every day. So what's some other ways we can practice? So yes, you still write it down, but things like having a gratitude jar. So a nice visual, you just have a sticker or a sign saying gratitude jar over it, a piece of paper, you write it down and put it in a jar. Slightly different way, but it's still different. And also having a gratitude wall. So you have gratitude wall. I just created the letters of gratitude wall out of A4 posters, put them up in a classroom or around the family home, and you can grab post-it notes and put them up there. So there's different ways you can do it, as well as a lot more other ways besides those, but just having that variety as well. And originally Growing with Gratitude was really, it still is focused on gratitude, but only gratitude. But then I realized, well, there's still other positive habits. And so Growing with Gratitude is actually based on the 5 habits of happiness, which is gratitude, kindness, empathy, positive reflection, and service. And all those things can be practiced. And again, they build habits through doing it regularly. So to mix it up and just not the focus on gratitude, having those other habits as well does break it up, but we're still developing positive habits. So yeah, that's what it's based on.
So you already mentioned that you were a teacher and have lots of experience working with kids. Was there a point where you sort of woke up one morning and went, I need to stop being a teacher from the traditional sense? You're still, of course, a teacher and a leader, but you need to now move down this path. Was there something that happened in your life, or was there an aha moment? What led you down basically an entrepreneurial path?
Yeah, there was, mate. Absolutely. So what happened was, in about 2010, I enjoyed teaching, loved it. It was a really good school at a Manuel primary school in Adelaide, Lutheran school, IB school, brilliant school, loved it. But something came across me about living on my terms as a more entrepreneurial sense. And I started looking into property investing, actually. And that actually was really unusual, and it triggered something I didn't expect. So I don't know if people had that aha or looked into something before and realized, took something totally out of something. So took something out they didn't expect. And that's what happened to me on this time. So what I discovered when I was looking into property investing, and I guess studying a few so-called successful ones, they kept on talking about this thing about their happiness leading to their success. And the more I dove down to it, they were talking about this thing about gratitude leading to their happiness and happiness leading to their success. I didn't get the connection. I knew what gratitude was, but I didn't understand how it worked between happiness and success and how it all came together. So I started to look into it. And it didn't take me long to discover there was a whole science behind it. And I said, as I keep on saying it, and I realized that just like learning a skill in a sport, you can actually learn to be a more resilient, happier person, but through practice and practicing things like being grateful. So I started to take on it, actually do it, and had a really positive impact. And I did that I still do it, but for a number of years. And it came to about 2013. And our school was looking for a positive education program to implement, but we weren't really sure how to do it. And we even employed a wellbeing coordinator, and it didn't really stick. It didn't really land. And to their own admission, they didn't really, I guess, achieve what they wanted to. But every now and then they might send out a link to an email with a bit of advice or a lesson or something, but it wasn't really embedded across the whole school. And it came to the January of school holidays in 2014. And I clearly remember I was walking along, I can't remember the street names, Diagonal Road and Cliff Street at Glenelg East, not far from where I lived, and I just stopped. And I just had one of those aha moments. I said to myself, what if I combine what I know as a teacher with what I've learned for my own benefit in this space of psychology, positive psychology? What if I could create a program and a system where not only helped our school, but schools across South Australia, maybe even the world? And so I went straight home that day, or straight home from there, and started just searching lessons, or coming out with lesson ideas and how it could possibly look. So all of 2014 and all of 2015, it was a side project. But the key, I didn't have a day off, not one day off the whole year. Now, I didn't do it because I was still teaching full time. Some days I'd do 10 minutes, or some days on weekends I'd do 2 or 3 hours. But it was just that real obsession just to make a difference, because I felt that I wish I learned these skills, and I knew schools were looking for something to do. The research was out there, there's benefits, but how do we do it? What to do? So that's the problem that I really wanted to solve. And ever since then, that's what I've been working on. So that's how the idea came about. And through that, I guess, lived experience, how it's benefited me, but also really wanting to make a difference, helping schools set their positive education program up. So most importantly, has an impact on young people.
What I really love about this on so many levels, but what I really love about it, it's just so aligned to your personal mission. So this is not just, like a great business opportunity, but you're doing this because you clearly care. You're living the values and the behaviors that you're teaching. As a fellow entrepreneur, good for you. Like it's a good, great opportunity. And, you're a bit like what we're doing here at Sassian and the Safe Village mission. It's beyond the dollars. It's like we're serving a great purpose. That's why, when the first time we spoke, I think we really connected well, and we're really so grateful that you get to share all of these wonderful insights in such a short session on this recording with our Safe Village audience. That's fantastic.
Thanks, Manuel. You're right, and you can't. Some people might be able to do it, but for me, if you're in that passion, I don't think I'd have the drive to actually do it, because it's not about you. Like, it's something bigger than yourself, and that's a human need is to be part of something bigger than yourself. And I guess this is something that I found that's bigger than myself, and definitely a driving factor every day.
Speaking of the mission, is there anything that you wish people knew about your mission or the work that you're doing that they quite don't know or quite don't get? And and hopefully this Safe Village platform gives us yet another opportunity to broadcast that message to them.
Absolutely, yeah. I guess being a bit of I try to be a futurist and see forward, and it's truly my belief that the future of positive education / wellbeing is being a special subject at school. Exactly the same manner of PE, exactly the same way as performing arts or language. So it'd be a specialist lesson taught by specialists. Now, some schools at the moment might do their PE and health together, but I mean totally focused on wellbeing / positive education. For how we explicitly teach gratitude, explicitly teach friendship, explicitly teach how to overcome challenges, and that's all it's devoted to. And that's, honestly, I really believe that's where the future of positive education is heading, to have it as that standalone subject in the school. Obviously, supporting the classroom and around the school in the whole school context, but definitely having that specialist lesson.
I think it's inevitable. I think, think back when, technology was meant to be like this little side subject that you did, thinking it's just, like if you can learn how to use a word processor in our days, right, would have been it. Whereas now, it's embedded in everything, and more, I think we're seeing this in the corporate workspace where wellness, mental and emotional wellness is a high priority, and we've got, the right language and programs around that. We definitely should see that coming into the education sector with kids, and I'd love to see that. Like I was saying, in my days, what if this was a whole subject? I'd eat it up. This is great.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. There's a few schools that I know. I'm not sure about West Australia, but there are definitely some schools in South Australia that do, which is fantastic. They work really well. They've got their own classroom. They've got it set up. It's done really well. It does work.
Well, Ash, I think I've personally enjoyed this conversation and taken a lot from it. I'm sure our audience, Safe Village audience, is going to take a lot out of it as well. I'm definitely going to link your website on the show notes, so our audience can click through and come and have a look at what you're doing, and hopefully engage you at their schools, because I absolutely have seen the impact of what you're doing. Look, a number of takeaways from me today were, that notepad right next to your bed. So we're going to sleep reflecting and going to bed on positive thoughts. Ash's recommending we think about 3 things that we're grateful for things that I've done for myself, 3 things where I've helped someone else. The other ideas around a gratitude jar and a gratitude wall, and figuring out ways not to make this boring, as some of the kids originally found, but making it specific. Is there anything that I didn't ask today, Ash, that I should have asked that you were hoping I'd ask in this interview?
No, I think it's covered it really well. You mentioned the website there. There's free resource in the Growing with Gratitude website. So if you go to growingwithgratitude.com/library, there's a free resource library that schools can access to get started, or get some additional resources if they're already doing something. Yeah, and we've got, I guess, from Growing with Gratitude's perspective, we We've got online programs that schools implement, so the teachers teach themselves. We do in-class workshops. We do grade level workshops, pretty much work with what the school wants, and we can adapt it to, as I said, what they want. And also we're able to help schools set up their whole education, positive education programs as well. So show them what to do to get it started and to really embed a strong, robust program across their school. So I think that's pretty much it. Covered a good amount of that time, mate.
Well, we love your work, and we wish you continued success. I want to see you take this international. I mean, it's already international, but I want to see you succeed on international markets as well as a fellow Aussie entrepreneur. Congratulations. Thanks for being part of Safe Village, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks, Sydney. Thanks for having me.